Oh, I mean, I've got so many thoughts on this, but I'll let the expert answer you first. Manners.
I've also got so many thoughts on this. We're going to have to do a whole different program, a whole different show just on this subject. But so um, a couple of years ago, how Jared, you'll be able to um, give me a sort of time frame on this, but my sense is that maybe 15 years ago there was a move by cricket boards around the country to bleach all the personality and character out of their players, and they actually sort of went on training courses with the PR and communications departments on their various boards when they were actually taught how to say nothing,
Mm.
and to not answer questions. And you know, there was this fear that they might say the wrong thing, and it would be a public relations disaster. And the public relations disaster duly happened because the players were so featureless that even respectable journalists like me and Jarrod had to go off, you know, looking for stories and not that we ever tabloided ourselves, but you know, the players would just say the same thing over and over and over again. And I'd just like to say, and I've done various training courses, as you have, Jarrod, with players and with agents. And I would just like to say that players who say something and have an interesting tale to tell and tell the truth, and are impervious to the bleach that is that they are required to the bleach bath that they're required to take when they become an international player. Their careers, I believe, um, generally speaking, go further and last longer because subconsciously or consciously, we as the media enjoy a personality and we enjoy somebody with character, and somebody who is dull and featureless and gives and says nothing. And after all, they're not talking to us; they're talking to cricket lovers because we're just the medium that passes on the message. And in my experience, there tends to be less sympathetic writing and commentating on players who might be going through a difficult period if if they've done nothing to promote themselves or the game. So that's that's just one thought.
Yeah, I think that era that you're talking about, it was very much the media managers would give them two or three key phrases, and I remember Brad Haddon, you know, whether you like him or not, had a very strong personality. And I remember I can't remember if it was an Ashes test. It might have been 10, 11 Ashes. We did a press conference with him. And he used the phrase, this game does turn, something like 17 times. And the only reason that it was entertaining is because he got more and more agitated every time he had to use it. And he just kept saying it over. And of course, the game didn't turn. Australia got absolutely belted the next day. And but I do remember that. And then talking to some of the media managers, I would say that in that era, and I'm not. You were a media manager, that is, of occasions for Zimbabwe. But I'd say that era, the whole media manager was to almost hide the players away as much as possible. So it wasn't just that the boards were training them; media managers were going out of their way to make sure that nothing was ever said. I think we've had a great crop of media managers in international cricket over the last few years. Also, think T20 franchises made it a lot easier for the press to get to people. What I would say, and I ECB asked me for my opinion. They took me out to lunch, and I told them what I thought, and they still haven't done it, which is they should do mix zones all the time. I mean, they should allow the players to tell their own stories in their own words, and they should make it so that at the end of each day there are five or six really interesting stories coming out of a day's cricket, or the day before a game, or the day after a game, and not just one story written over and over and over again. And the actual press conferences should be only coaches and captains. Anything else should be an environment where you get access to three or four different players. They're a little bit more relaxed. They know they can stand next to us. They've not got the lights in their face. I think that's a much better system. I think American sports have proved that. If cricketers don't want to open up the locker rooms, that's fine. Find another space to be able to do that in. Do it out on the ground if you have to at the end of the day's play. I think that would allow the players to tell their stories better. I think we'd get more personal reactions out of them. I think cricket writing and cricket broadcasting would be far better. And I think it's better for the sport. But instead, at the moment, it is still very much, Rory Dollard from PA, first question.
Given the amount of innovation and change and forward thinking and progression that there has been in the game, is it not spectacular how little the press conference has changed? And the other thing is that players have told me, for 30 years, there have been players who have told me just how intimidating they find it and how uncomfortable they find it. They sit behind a desk in front of a bunch of microphones with journalists, firing questions at them. And it becomes more comfortable, I suppose, if you're lucky enough to play for years and years and years and you recognise the faces and you eventually become comfortable in that environment. But they've been doing it like that since, ever. You're absolutely right. And COVID was the first time that began to change because for the first time we would have a press conference where the player was far closer to his comfort zone. He was still surrounded by journalists, but he was on the outfield. He was that's his office. And do you remember we had lots of open air press conferences, and in fact players became a lot more comfortable with Zoom press conferences. But that was not thanks to any forward-thinking cricket administrator. That was thanks to a pandemic that we finally had different formulas. But Open Zone, I'm familiar with in covering multi-sport events like Commonwealth Games and Olympics. That was the first time I experienced it. There'd be a mixed zone, as you said, and they seemed to work really, really well. And just by the by, and this is just a distraction really, it also discourages lazy journalists, doesn't it? Because you actually have to do some work as a journalist. You need to go find the person you need to speak to and make an effort.
I was told that one of the reasons that the ECB didn't go towards it is because some senior journalists weren't as happy, because it would have meant slightly more work for them. So the ICC.
Well, there's a surprise, Jarrod.
Yeah. So the ICC went to them. When was it? When was it? They did it for before COVID, 2019 World Cup. We had it. We had the mixed zones, and it was brilliant. The ability to go and talk to. I remember there was an innings where Nicholas Pooran had made some runs. And you could talk to Jason Holder, Roddy Eswick, Nicholas Pooran, and someone else about his development, right? You can't do that in a normal press conference. And you get, and also, the players in a normal press conference are trying to get through it. Whereas in this case, if you've only got 2 questions for them, they can go. And then on the days where there's 7 or 8 questions, they'll stay a little bit later. The whole thing works better.